Welcome to the Jaden show. I hope you've had a wonderful week. It's lovely to see you all again today. You and I, we're going to Australia to meet composer, to meet international expert on climate change, to meet author, to meet songwriter, to meet artist. The guy is amazing, Arek Sinanian. You're going to meet him in just a few minutes. But let's check out a little bit of his music, shall we? Well, you know what time it is. Don't worry, you're going to meet Arek very soon. But it's time quickly for a Jaden Show commercial break. you beautiful people, are you ready? Are you sitting comfortably? Because you're about to travel to the other side of the world, if you're not already in Australia, that is, to meet composer, author, artist, and international expert on climate change, the amazing human being that is Arek Sinanian. Check him out. Arek Sinanian, how are you? Or should I say g'day, mate? Because you're quite far away, right?
Good. Well, I'm very well, and it's an early morning here, and I'm very well. I'm ready to go, Jaden.
Lovely to meet you. Lovely to meet you. Now, not only are you a composer, songwriter, but you're an incredible author as well. And I want to cover a bit of everything on today's show. So I want to take you back to when you're younger, in your kind of your family environment, in your home environment, when you're a kid. What was going on around you at the time that kind of started the embryonic creativity that is coming to fruition?
Funny you should ask, because I've often asked that question to myself, because I've always, even as a child, I used to write little ditties, little stories. I was in the Scouts when I was like 10 years old, and they asked us to present a play. So there I was, within literally minutes. I had a little sort of 10-minute play written almost on the spot. I've done it all my life, Jaden, and to be honest with you, it's a mystery to me. I don't know where it comes from, but when I'm in that creative mode, whether it's music, writing, story, whatever, in that creative mode, I'm in another realm. I'm in another place. And let me tell you, it's a beautiful place. I'm sure there's science behind it. I think, in fact, I have read about it, a little bit about it. It turns out when we are in a creative mode, our brain is in alpha waves or beta waves or whatever's happening. And by the way, when I say creative, we don't have to be Beethoven. We don't have to be Elton John to be creative. What I mean by creative, for instance, when we read a book, we are creating. What are we creating? Because when in my book, for instance, I say John in London walked up to King's Cross Station, when the reader reads that, it's he or she is trying to imagine John walking along Oxford Street or whatever to King's Cross Station in London. Now, even if you haven't been to London, you've seen images of London, we've seen films with London. So, and even if you haven't even seen pictures, you try to imagine John walking to the train station.
Absolutely.
Because you've walked to train stations. So when we're reading, we are creating images, we are creating characters, we are creating the words get into our brain, and our brain does the rest. And in that creative mode, it turns out, science tells us, we go into this very relaxed, wonderful space where all the stresses, all the other negative things, thoughts disappear. No wonder, therefore, people read. People like to read stories when they want to relax, when they want to just switch off. And that's just wonderful. And as for music, again, as a child, there was a lot of music around me, although nothing was formal. I wasn't trained as a musician. I wish I was. I wish at 4 or 5 years old, my parents said, listen, I think you've got some talent here. Learn the piano or learn the violin or whatever. So I wish I had done that, because why? Because I think it would have given me more tools, more ability. So a lot of my writing, composition, I do it on a keyboard with a MIDI interface with my iMac, and I have access to every instrument known to mankind and all that, and you know all about it because you do the same thing. And I have such fun with it. It's like playing games. It's like Lego. It's like putting pieces together. once I have the gem, a little seed of a musical idea, could be a melody, could be a rhythm, I grab it and I think, oh, what can I do with this? Okay, I think I'm going to start with a piano or a guitar or a violin or a cello, whatever. And then it builds, and that building process, and that's why I think of Lego or Meccano or something where you're starting to put pieces, and then at some point I take some pieces out. No, that doesn't work. And that process of creativity and playing, it's like it's playing.
Yeah.
It's fun. So when you take me back to my childhood, even at my age, I'm playing. I'm playing with notes, and in this book that I hope we talk about, I'm playing with words, with ideas, with characters, and I have so much fun. I love it, absolutely love it.
Even though you're playing, I mean, you are an international expert on climate change, so that's not, for me. You're playing, but you have a pretty intense reputation, mate, to be called that. Your playing has gone home, international expert status.
Well, as you would appreciate, Jaden, at some point, I must have decided that music and composition was going to be a hard gig to make a living out of.
Yeah.
So what I did, I studied at university. I did a couple of engineering degrees, and the climate change thing has been my life's work, as in work, not play,
right.
Work. So at some point when I realized that the world, some of the world, the influential world, was just missing the point, I was quite curious to know why people, seemingly intelligent, seemingly educated people, could not accept, they were ignoring or not accepting the science behind climate change. And I wanted to know why. I'm also an amateur psychologist. I try to figure out people when they do things that I don't expect, or if I'm shocked or if I'm surprised by a behavior. So this surprised me because these same people, I thought to myself, these same people would go to a doctor when they're not feeling well. Okay, so that's science. The same people would board an aeroplane to go from Sydney to London. Now, to me, that's putting your life in the hands of science.
Yeah, absolutely.
So why do these very people would accept the science of aeronautics, the science of medicine, the science of all sorts of science? Science of computer science. They rely on computer science to talk across the world from Sydney to Mexico. And yet, when it came to climate change, climate science, they just would not accept it. And there are people even now. And I just find that so fascinating, Jaden. So what I did a series. I started to study the psychology of it because I wanted to know, as I said, I wanted to know why. And so I started writing online papers about certain aspects of this. The research showed that there were all sorts of factors coming into it. It turns out denial, in general, is a normal cognitive method we all use. I use it to overcome a really, really difficult situation. For instance, I'm in denial of dying. I don't think I'm going to die, because death to me is a difficult concept to grasp.
Yeah, I'm sure that one at the moment.
We're all in denial of something or another. Yeah. And anyway, so I did some research, and it turns out a lot of research has been done to correlate, to correlate all sorts of things: gender, ideology, religion, even religion, to cognitive barriers that people find difficult to accept. I mean, religion is an interesting one because highly religious, and I'm not having a go here. In fact, my book, A Climate for Denial, does not have a go or blame anybody. It's just merely trying to explain what's happening. in our brains? What's happening in us when we deny something? Why are we doing that? And how are we doing that? For example, I mean, if you're a firm believer of God, and that God is omniscient and omnipotent, you would believe that this is all part of his plan. And who are we to question that plan? Who are we to question that climate change? After all, God, the omnipotent God, is doing all this, surely, because he does everything. He controls our lives, controls the weather, controls what's happening in history. This is all part of his plan. So I get it. So, but trying to understand it, I thought it was important to put it in a book, to try to help the conversation. So, for example, when I meet a climate denier these days, I don't argue the point. I don't try to explain to them climate change. There's no point, because they're coming from a very firm ground that they are not going to accept. So what's the point of me trying? It's like trying to explain God.
As my mother always said, you cannot preach to the converted.
Exactly. So, but I don't do that. But what I try to do is have a civil, respectful conversation with these people, because now I know what's going on. And once you know what's going on, now you know where it's coming from. You have a better, instead of sort of bang, 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 now I'm going to tell you, no, you're going to. So it as you said, it doesn't get anywhere.
I kind of think as well, like, just on that kind of note, but that's what a lot of people are browbeaten by, the media and fake narratives as well. Like, I think because there is so much confusion, and I think it's intentional confusion as well. The lines that humans, regular Joe blogs, are fed, like my fine self, the Facebook readers, the TikTok viewers, the whatever, when you see something like climate change is because of cows passing wind, but it's not because of giant organizations in China or air flight, or, you just think, oh my God, this is just, but it's because of cows passing wind.
Yeah, in fact, you've mentioned one of my chapters, which talks about what's known as confirmation bias. I'm sure you know this. For example, I could say to you, Jaden, my grandmother smoked cigarettes from the age of 16, and she lived to 96.
Yeah.
Now, confirmation bias. So therefore, smoking is fine. She smoked all her life, and she lived till 96, Jaden.
They were probably made a bit differently then as well. There probably wasn't as much chemical as they are today.
But, I'm just giving a silly example.
No, exactly. By
the way, my grandmother did not live till 96, and she didn't smoke. But anyway, I'm just making a silly example where cognitive dissonance leads to what's known as confirmation bias. So what we do is, and I do it, we all do it. You pick bits of information, and then, of course, you've got bits of misinformation, right? You pick the bits that suits your ideology, suits your belief system. Yeah. If it suits your narrative, then you use those bits of misinformation or bits of even real information, but it could be completely irrelevant. Yeah.
Yeah, we do that with everything, don't we? Like you said, with religion, with,
So, but then, as I said though, Jaden, so that was sort of my life's work in a way. So it was a culmination of the work that I had done as an engineer for the United Nations and for Australian government and other, for corporations trying to reduce emissions, trying to encourage energy efficiency, all that. So that was sort of the first phase of my work. My working life ended, and now I'm embarking on a new challenge and a new direction in my sort of creative work, which is my first novel, which you know about. So in a way, I'm now satisfying a lifelong, back to my childhood, that the question you asked me. I'm now satisfying my creative urge, which was there at a very, very early age in my life. And I had, in a way, I'd suppressed that to make a living, to be honest, to have a life as an engineer, as a technical person. But now I've parked that. I've said I've done my bit, and now I'm doing a lifelong dream, really, of putting my creative efforts and energy into writing fiction and writing books, other than technical books about climate change.
But I mean, obviously, you're still very passionate about climate change and all that.
Of course, you can't. No,
I mean,
exactly.
Do you still do your do you still do talks and conferences and stuff like that, or have you literally go? You know, that's kind of I've said my piece. It's a little bit real. None of you are listening to me.
No, I haven't. No, you can't give up on it.
Can't just switch off, right?
In fact, the last two, I'm on a number of advisory committees, and in fact, the last 2 days I was in Canberra, in the capital of Australia, and because I'm part of a government body, a committee that's looking into Australia's emission reduction schemes and how we can improve that. So I've still got a hand in it. Now, I don't think I'll be able to get that out of my system entirely.
Path, right?
But, you know, when you talk about passions, Jaden, I think I have many passions. Music is also a passion, as I said, and art is a passion. I have many areas of my life that I truly, my heart is in it, and art and music are so fundamentally important to me. And my first book has art as the sort of basic premise, and it does have music in it, and it has a very, very expensive instrument in it, which I may tell you a little bit about, but not too much.
I think you might need to, quite frankly. Can I ask you as well, because I know as a creative person and as a Piscean as well, because you're a fellow Piscean, that sometimes real life really gets me, and I don't get it, I don't understand it, and it crushes my ability to dream, to create, to be passionate and things like that. Did you not find, because obviously writing is a passion of yours, but then when you're writing about something that is so deeply affecting our planet, our culture, our whole kind of system as we know it at this moment, did it not become a little bit like, wow, this is quite heavy? And did it not feel that you were, as a singer, I love creating, I love doing my shows, I love doing videos, I love doing, you know, the photo shoots and stuff like that. When all of a sudden I'm now singing just to survive, just to do work, I find it very difficult, and it kills my love of it. When you were doing something that actually is really quite deep, really quite heavy, because it's so, you know, the potential outcomes of not listening to what people are saying is the end of the planet as we know it. So did that not crush your passion, your creativity, your spirit in writing, because what you was writing about was and is so intense?
Yeah, I know what you mean, Jaden. Yes, and it can do that. But at some point, yes, I vacillate, and I go down, and then I pick myself up, and I'm not going to use the word depressed, but I do get disheartened. And look around me today, you know, all the things that are happening around us, and it is disturbing, and it is down hard, and it's you sort of think, what? And I guess for me, what I've been able to do, and I'm very grateful that I can, is to say, well, what can I do? I'm one person amongst, 8 billion people. I'm not so influential. I'm not the Prime Minister of Australia. I'm not the President of USA. So I don't have
Unfortunately.
Oh, God. Okay, as an individual with limited resources, in fact, very limited resources, but except my brain and my laptop and my keyboard, and armed with a cup of coffee, There isn't a lot that I can grab hold of except what I can do. So then I go into this phase of saying, okay, as an individual amongst 8 billion other people on Earth today, what can I do in the small sphere of influence that I have? And that gives me some satisfaction to be able, and the book on climate change was part of that. I said, in fact, it cost me, look, I will never recover the cost of me writing, and I'll never get that time back that I spent in doing the research and writing it. And even with my novel, by the way, also has a very deep philosophical message and a deep philosophical premise. Again, art and music, because I believe that art and music is the soul. They are the soul of society. They are the soul of humanity. So, okay, how can I help this soul? How can I comfort this soul in a small, tiny way? And I guess I give myself the satisfaction and say, okay, well, I've done my bit. I can do my bit. Whether it's singing to a small crowd of people as you do, whether you're singing to a bigger crowd through the internet, you have subscribers, you have people who listen to you, you have an audience, you have a sphere of influence. Okay, what can Jaden do for this sphere of influence? What can you do as a caring, thinking, and emotional and intellectual human being? What can you do in this small sphere? You don't have the ears of the 8 billion people in the world, but you have the ears of thousands maybe. And that is, for me, if 1,000 people have read this book, I'll be a happy man. Because I also believe, Jaden, that it's like a ripple in a calm lake.
Oh, completely, yeah.
There's a ripple effect. Like if you and I are influencing each other in some positive way, hopefully, and I think you are. You're influencing me. Just talking to you makes me feel better. And what if? I have no doubt this happens. What if I take that positive influence and then I spread it to my friends and my influence, and in a very subtle, small way? What if we each, if you have an audience of 1,000 people who listen to your beautiful songs, but then they spread that even subconsciously to other people, to other thousands of people, and I think almost, that's why they call it viral, because it's then a virus, a positive, happy virus that you are spreading to many other people that you don't even know, to people that you'll never meet. And for instance, my book, if people sitting around a dinner table, even in one small conversation, they talk about some of the issues or some of the concepts or some of the information that I've shared. How wonderful is that?
Amazing. Absolutely.
So that gives me comfort, and that's all I think I can do in the short time that I have on this planet. That's it.
Well, I always believe that to change the world is just setting yourself up for a fall, but to change your world, to change the immediate garden in front of you, is something that you are in control of, and being an example of that change is also something that people will either get or reject. But if one person gets it out of 100,000, that's still quite sacred, right?
Yeah, and that's all we can hope for, and that's all I need, really. I need to satisfy myself. In fact, reading both books that I've written, in fact, everything I ever write, the first thing I do is I think of my audience. Who am I writing this for? I'm sure you do the same thing with your songs and your music. Who's going to listen to this? And what am I trying to convey in this song, in this piece of music, in this writing, in this book? And who's my audience? Who's going to be reading this? I had to have that in my mind every sentence that I wrote. And again, it's like a conversation with someone that I haven't even met yet, and it's a conversation with someone who hasn't even read my sentence yet. But I'm imagining, again, the creative element. I'm imagining someone reading this sentence. What's it going to do, and how is that relevant to the entire story or concept or idea that I'm trying to convey?
Amazing.
So it's that's what gets me going,
Yeah.
Jaden. Yeah,
How different did you find writing something, like your A Climate for Denial was your first book, and that was more kind of fact research based. And then
correct.
obviously The Act of Deception, which is your novel. How was your mindset? How was the your own personal energy, vibe, whatever, actually writing something? The writing is the creative passion, but you were
Yes.
writing two very different things. Did that feel so different for you, or did you approach it the same way? Was it the same energy you used to do both? I mean, can you explain
Yeah,
if there was a
it changed, and I learned, Jaden. I started the same way as I wrote about climate change, but Art of Deception is a novel. It's a thriller. It's fiction, but it does contain some factual things in it. And as a writer, I had to completely change. I had to do an 180-degree shift, and I'm very grateful. I appointed a mentor who lives in Birmingham. His name is Liam. I'm very grateful for his guidance. He's a young man who is very, very skilled in doing exactly this. And he guided me, and I learned gradually. My first draft, as if I can't even bear the thought of looking at it now, because it was rubbish, absolute rubbish, because it had far too much Arek the engineer, Arek the researcher in it, Arek the technical person in it. There was a lot of detail about this and that, and Liam said, what's this? What's the relevance of all this, Arek? Yeah, it's all in your head, yes, but it doesn't belong here. It belongs in some other a factual book that you might write one day. So that was very helpful, and gradually, as I worked through Art of Deception with him, I learned, and that learning process was so invigorating. I loved it
wow?
because I was now challenged. I was now getting into my really creative, not engineering, factual information, sort of informative phase, to now the creative, because I had to channel a different part of my brain, and I just love that. But I had to learn it. It was not easy. Okay?
Wow.
And that's, when I say I'm proud of it, I am proud of this book, because it was such a transformation to get from here to there, and people are telling me that I have achieved. It is, well, I'm told it's a page turner. It's a thriller. It's got many twists and turns. It's quite complex, so you have to read it, and the complexity makes it intriguing and thrilling, because you just don't know what's going to happen in the next page. And that was so exciting for me. Like I would wake up in the middle of the night, Jaden. It's dreadful. It's you don't. And I have a notebook next to my bed, and I would literally wake up at either whatever 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and I would jot down, because I had this idea. Oh, this is what I can do. Oh yes. Oh, and then of course, once I did wake up properly in the morning, whatever, 6, 7 o'clock, after my coffee, I'd sit down on the laptop, and I'd immediately put these ideas in. Of course, the first draft of those ideas that came at 3 a.m. would be absolute rubbish. So then I'd have to spend the next few days teasing it out and making it coherent and consistent with the entire story, because the idea might have been brilliant, but how do I make that fit into the narrative, fit into the characters, fit into the even the language? So that was really, really exciting. Yeah.
When you're being passionate about one thing, so in the process of writing a book, do you have time for your other creative outlets, or do you just put all your creativity into? I mean, do you still listen to write music? Do you still do art? I mean, or is it just
Yeah,
like, no, just focus?
yeah.
This is one thing at a time.
I'm not that sort of person, Jaden. I have a very disorganized brain, and it's maybe I have ADHD or whatever. I don't know. I've never been diagnosed, but I can't do one thing, just one thing in one day. I can't. I have to go to my music, go for a walk, do some
Yeah,
cooking, go and meet people. I have to do lots of things every day, because I need to rest my brain as well. I
yeah,
can't just I can sit for 2 or 3 hours and write. Yes, I can do that, but after 3 hours, I'm done. I get out. I go for a walk, or I listen to music. Music's very important to me. I listen to music every day of my life. Nowadays, it's a lot of it is classical, but the music I write is not classical, but it's ethereal. It just comes from. So it's important for me to do all of this, because I can't just do one thing I just can't do it.
I think that could be a Piscean trait as well. That's very. Yeah, I remember my father died many, many years ago on my 21st birthday. And I remember thinking, right, I'm going to deal with this shit now. So I put myself into therapy, and I dealt with it. And I remember doing quite a long time in therapy, actually. And I came out of therapy and I was reading about, like star signs, sun signs, and all this kind of stuff. And I was reading a really good piece on the pros and cons of being a Piscean. And I read all the pros, and of course, I am everyone to the bloody T, like complete. I'm Piscean rising, so I'm pretty screwed if I'm being honest. And then
Poor thing.
with Airy and Moon, so I'm screwed and stubborn about it. So that's even worse. And then I read all the negatives about being a Pisces, and I was like, this has been the last 3-4 months of my therapy sessions. I'm not screwed up. I'm just Piscean. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Like
But
everything that I had discussed.
you have a beautiful soul, Jaden, and now I say that deliberately. You talk about therapy, and I've had one or two, and the most important therapy I've had, this man taught me how to find inner peace and inner happiness through.
Wow.
What we did an exercise. I want to share this with your listeners and with you, because I think it was absolutely fundamental to me finding my purpose and my meaning. And what we did, we identified my values. We did a series of exercises. We didn't go to my childhood and trauma and all that. And he said, okay, let's work out who Arek is. What are the values that Arek aspires to? What are the values that Arek wants to live by? So once we did that, and it wasn't earth shattering. I mean, the usual stuff. I wanted to be an honest man. I wanted to contribute to society. I wanted to be a good friend, a good lover, all that sort of good father, all that sort of stuff. But he said, okay, well, and there was more than that. There was many layers to it. There was the core, and then there was like an onion. Sort of, it looked beyond the sort of the core values. But then we had to work out what are the sort of important connecting values with that. Anyway, so once we did that, he said, okay. I said, well, what do I do with this now? Okay, I know who I am now. He said, well, every day, whatever you do, whether it's writing, meeting with friends, you live according to those values. Absolutely, without exception. So, and once you do that, you don't need the rest of the world to tell you that you're an honest man, you're a good father, you're a great friend, you're a great writer, whatever. Because once you do it yourself, then you give yourself the compliment, if you like, and and so you become much more self-sufficient, self-activated, and self-satisfied. Because once once you know who you are, You live every day of your life according to those values. Anyway, all I'm telling you, Jaden, is, when you talk about, being a Piscean, being spiritual, being this, being that, for me anyway, I can only tell you how important it was for me to suddenly realize, okay, this is who I am. And these are the things that are important to me. Not just values, but things like writing a book. This turns out, this is extremely important to me. And doing this was, when I say live your life according, this is part of me living my life, living my values. Whereas this was in a way doing things that other people, like the world, like, the engineering world or my profession expected me. Whereas this is Arek. This is coming straight from my heart and my head and my PC.
Wow, mate. How has the book been received?
Oh, look, okay. I mean, of course, friends are being very generous, but I know that these are friends, and one of them at least. Wendy.
Wendy.
You interviewed her. She's an exceptional writer.
She's a good girl as well. I really like her.
But also, well, exactly, and she's also very spiritual and very deep thinker. Mm-hmm. So when she comes back, and I know that if she thought my book was rubbish, she would tell me. In fact, she did have some notes for me. She said, if you were to revise this book, have a look at these little... Anyway, she thinks there's a film in it. She thinks it could easily be made into a movie, and that's gratifying. I haven't heard from Spielberg yet, but anyway,
There's time.
Yes.
He might watch this show and go, really like that. Jaden Cornelious is all right, and oh my God, Arek and his book. I need to do some more research into that.
I know. Where's his number? I need to call him.
Pebble in the water again, eh? We don't know what happens with everything.
Wendy and others have said how much they enjoyed it, and that's so gratifying, because at the end of the day, as I said, I never wrote it because I thought I was going to become a multi-billionaire out of it. I wrote it because I wanted to. I had to. People ask composers and musicians and writers, they say, why do you do this? Very often the answer is, it's because I can't imagine not doing it.
My answer is because I don't have a choice.
You don't have a choice.
No, I'm not me without it, whether I like it or not sometimes.
Okay. Would I be devastated if everyone said, Arek, this is rubbish? Probably. Not devastated, but I'd be disappointed, but mainly disappointed in me, because I would blame myself to say, well, obviously I did a shit job. Yeah. But I am getting good reviews, and friends that I trust their opinions, because they're intelligent, learned, well-read people. When they say, Arek, you've done an amazing job, it's very gratifying. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be millions. I'm okay with just having, back to that small influence or sphere of influence that we have, and that's good enough for me. But
if you can make enough money to pay off that first book, that would be great.
Oh, that would be fantastic. But as you said, there's time, Jaden. Absolutely. There's time.
It's quite funny. I get people saying, "Oh, Jaden, there's a flyer going around today." I get people saying, "Oh, Jaden, when are you going to do another album?" I'm like, "When I've paid off the last 3 that you haven't got a copy of yet." But yeah,
yeah. Look, and you know what? I went into my local bookshop the other day. It's a big shop. It's a chain in Australia, and they had tables of new arrivals. I thought, oh my God, these are just the new arrivals, and there's shelves upon shelves upon shelves. Somebody told me the other day 3 million books were published last year.
Really?
3 million books. So there's a lot of writers out there. There's a lot of people, and particularly now that you can self-publish and you can get it out there pretty easily. Amazon makes it easy, and I have to confess, mine is on Amazon, but I'm going to correct that. I'm going to expand on that because I don't think Amazon's distribution is really adequate. But all I'm saying is there's a lot of writers out there. So try to make a living out of writing. I mean, if your listeners are trying to make a living out of being an author and they're starting off, I would say think very hard.
Or a musician.
Or a musician. Think very hard about a second income stream.
Absolutely. Well, funny enough, I've just had my first book published as well.
Yes, the children's one.
My little children's one, very in-depth. Lots of research went into that, how Leonard Fluff would find a lesbian militant campaigning chicken as a best friend. But
can I ask you this? When you do research, how much of your research actually makes it into the book?
You know what? I didn't do any research. I didn't do any research. I literally sat down one day and I was kind of reminiscing. And I was a grade A student at school for the first few years. I spoke really well. I never got less than an A minus. I was doing really, really good in all my exams. And the more proper voice I had and the better I did at my exams, the more beatings I got. And I was severely beaten probably every single day of my school life. So when I started talking more common and started screwing up my exams, I got treated a lot nicer. And so they didn't call me prof anymore. They treated me they kind of just ignored me then. I didn't become relevant in anyone's life, to be fair. And
the tall poppy syndrome is everywhere, right?
Yeah, of course it is, absolutely. So I was sitting and I was remembering about a book that I wrote for my English lit or something. I can't remember. It was one of my English exams. And I was like, oh my God, that was quite fun. And I remember some really witty lines in that. I didn't remember the whole story. In fact, I was dying to, really. And it might even be in my mum's attic somewhere. But I was like, oh yeah, it's about this lamb called Leonard Fluff. And I thought, oh, I'm going to try and write something. So literally in that moment, I just sat down and wrote my book in an hour, 45 minutes, 2 hours. It's only a small book.
Wow.
And it just flowed and it was really nice. And all the stories of all the other characters flowed and I had ideas about all of them, about the sheepdog being ADHD and PTSD, and they've all got kind of adult problems, but it's done in a kind of in a nice way. And I sent it directly to Wendy actually, and she said it's a very charming, very funny book. She said, but obviously it needs proofreading, so I had someone to proofread it. I sent it to her. She second proofread it for me, and then I sent it to Andrew Spark at Andrew Spark Publishing in the UK, and he said it's too short to be on a paperback, so get me another book, but let's put it out on Kindle. It's brilliant, so put it out straight away on Kindle. So and so my mum was like, "Oh, congratulations!" I went, "Yes, I'm now a published author, mother, and it's another one of my many talents that isn't going to bring me in any money."
But it makes you live your values, remember.
You know what? It was just...
It's something that you had to do, right?
Yeah, complete. And something... I was listening to some classical music back in the day, this composer from New Zealand, and I just was completely engulfed in this music. And I was like, I have to write a song to this. And I literally sat there, and I would say in 7 minutes... I had written a song called Gladness Crawling, and I messaged him. It was back the days of MySpace. I sent him a message. I was like, look, you don't know me, I don't know you, but I'm in love with your music. Please, 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 would you let me write a top line and lyrics to this song? And he said, well, actually, funnily enough, that song is out on competition at the moment for someone to write a lyric and a top line. Oh my God. So if you can do it and get it in, I'll listen to it. The next day, I booked a recording studio. Literally, I was living in a place called Devon in the southwest of England, and I was going to London the next day. So early in the morning, I booked a recording studio. I said, I just need to put a real basic demo down of this song. I literally wrote the song in 7.5 minutes. It was almost like a message from my father, saying I know you're grieving, but bit by bit, gladness returns. It's called Gladness Crawling. It's a very slow process, but I'm with you and I'm guiding you. I've never written anything like that before. I recorded the very basic demo. While I was driving 4 hours to London, the producer had already sent it to New Zealand. By the time I got to New Zealand, the guy said the song's yours.
Wow.
So
But two things you've said, really resonate and of course resonate with our discussion this morning. Two things is how a seed of an idea can come from almost a completely random place. You're listening to a classical music by some composer in New Zealand, and then that seed grows in your head. But the second thing you mentioned was you just had to.
oh,
You had to write that
it
right.
was almost a
You had
desperation.
to
I was
do
like,
it.
I have to have that
You know,
song.
and that's
Yeah,
the seed for this idea actually came also in a classical concert here in Sydney, and I had to write this book. So whether it gets me any income at all, it's something that I had to do, just like the song that you just had to write. So it's something that I had to do, and I'm so glad that I did it, because it's just I think I'm a better person for it, because I have satisfied one of my absolutely fundamental driving forces. So that's so important.
no, absolutely.
Yeah,
It's that connection, isn't it, to creative spirit, I guess.
yeah, yeah. But I think you and your audience, is it, whether it's 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000, and if you can make, whatever, 1,000 children happy with your lovely short story on Kindle, isn't that wonderful? Isn't that wonderful
I'm
to?
quite happy just with one person, actually, and whatever happens after that. I've obviously been a creative person, been an empathetic person. I've kind of struggled over the years, and been a very shy, a very timid, in my teens and in my 20s, needing that recognition from people, and being having such self-esteem issues, that now I kind of, and I don't mean this by alienating other people, I actually don't do it for other people anymore, because I think when I wrote things with other people, or specific audience genres or something in mind, it kind of almost created expectations, or like, oh, the teen population are going to love this, and oh my god, the Jaden fans will love this, and oh my goodness, I kind of felt as if it almost set me up for a fall. Now I do things because I really, either I'm inspired, I'm channeling, I'm happy, I'm in love with a particular thing that I'm doing, and I do it for me now, and I really love that. And if anyone else gets it, I actually kind of think, for me, that people get it more when it comes from a position of, I wouldn't say not caring what others think,
No,
but
no, you're talking about authenticity here,
yeah,
Jaden. I think when you are, and I am, and when creatives are more authentic, and it comes straight from their heart or their soul or whatever, from their gut, it because it's so uniquely theirs, I think the audience connects far better than that.
absolutely,
If
absolutely,
it's
yeah,
formulaic, and if it's trying to satisfy some sort of, you know, given formula, given method, given technique or whatever, and you're doing it for some sort of audience satisfaction, it doesn't
it
work.
doesn't work.
I think when it comes from you, I think people identify that, and they connect better with that. I think you're much more likely to succeed when you're just doing your own thing, because that's uniquely you.
Yeah,
It's not
absolutely.
fulfilling some external criteria, and it's satisfying your own internal criteria, and that's always been important
Yeah,
for my writing. It has to come, and and the message or the story or the core of the soul of the story also has to be you. It has to be a unique story, a unique character that people go, oh wow, because it has to be different. It has to be unique.
yeah,
Otherwise, it's if everyone else has done it or is doing it, it's not Jaden, and it's not Arek.
no,
So it's just not going to
absolutely.
work. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a bit like I think, when I first started singing in the 90s, I was a pop boy signed to BMG Records. Everything was going well in a pop group, but you have to have this particular instrumentation. You can't bring a saxophone or this or that because then it takes you out of the the pigeonhole that you're in at the moment. And I think, and then I went to classical music. I was just singing classical and opera, and that was very kind of regimented. And I think as I got older, and I think COVID had something to do with it on a really good way. The fact that it kind of broke down everyone's barriers because we were all broken. We were all in isolation and we could do nothing. And we had to really look, especially being an artist, a musician or a singer, what do? I can't leave my house. So, and I think, and I remember speaking to, a friend of mine who's one of the Canadian tenors, and he was like, I've gone from singing arias to singing Winner Takes It All by ABBA. And I loved it, and it was the same for me. I moved to Mexico with my 30 backing tracks of classical and opera songs. I'm in the middle of Nessun Dorma, and someone says to me, "Do you know any Whitney?"
Well,
Okay, yeah. So I would do that.
yeah.
But it's always Jaden, and I can play with my voice.
But exactly, you could even Whitney you can do in Jaden's voice, and
Well,
I don't mean literally your voice, but your interpretation.
absolutely, because obviously, you wrote A Climate for Denial very differently to An Art of Deception, and I will sing Nessun Dorma very differently to how I was singing Diana Ross or Whitney Houston, but it's always going to be Jaden. It's always going to be, that's going to be the common denominator.
Not only that. Here's another thing. If I was to write Art of Deception in, say, a few years' time, guess what? It would be different.
Absolutely.
Why? Because I will have changed.
Yep.
My perception of the world, my own kind of inner voice or inner feelings, whatever, would have changed. And it might even be a completely different story, but based on the same sort of premises and all that. But you know what I mean? So and that's the beauty of art and music. Every time, I mean, there are pieces of classical music, for instance, that I listen to. We all know what they are. They're very, very well known, Beethoven or Schubert or whatever. And every time I listen to it, I have an emotional response to it. And I wonder why. And that response is so intense because I've heard this piece of music 100, 200, 300 times. So why does it have that still? Because I have changed. When I listen to Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, every time I listen to it, I'm a little bit different.
Yes.
My view of the world has changed. The things around me have changed. I'm perhaps a few months older, a year older, whatever. So when we stand in front of the Mona Lisa, every time we see it, we see it slightly differently because we have changed. The observer has changed.
Yes.
My ears have changed. My eyes have changed. My soul have changed. So I think, and people even say, I mean, do you read books for the second time? Yes, I do, because the second time I read it, it was completely different.
Yeah.
I got something completely different out of it than I did for the first time. And that's the beauty of art, the beauty of music, because it changes.
Yeah.
It changes with us. It changes with the world. It doesn't change. It's the same Ninth Symphony, the same notes, same orchestra playing, whatever. But we have changed. The listener has changed. The observer has changed.
No, it's magical. It's absolutely magical.
It's lovely.
What's going? I mean, you've obviously just released this new book. What is going on for you at the moment? What are you doing right now, apart from obviously?
I've got two other books happening.
Oh wow! Okay.
Two half written books. One is a fictional sort of. I would call it a historic fiction. And the historic bit is requiring quite a bit of research on my part, but that's okay, and I enjoy that because it's to do with the Armenian genocide, and and it's quite relevant to today, to what's happening in Palestine, what's happening in Ukraine, what's happening in, and of course, Africa's suffered from many genocides.
Yeah.
So, but like there's been many, how many books and stories have been written around the First and Second World Wars? I mean, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands,
Yeah.
right? Well, I'm picking another sort of very traumatic time that not many people, because I joined a writers group, and when I was telling them about this, they said, "Oh, we don't know anything about this. It's an interesting story, and it happened." And so, but I don't want it to be sad and gloomy and all that. In fact, I want it to be a positive story, because we all know that even in bad times, extraordinary acts of kindness, extraordinary acts of generosity takes place.
Mm-hmm.
So I want this to be, believe it or not, out of a genocide, historic genocide, I'm going to try to, and that's my challenge, try to make a positive story about humanity.
Wow.
Because, and there's going to be stories out of Gaza, there's going to be stories out of the Ukraine, because difficult situations also require humanity, kindness, and it shines through, and that's what we like hearing about. We know what humans are capable of, all the atrocities we're capable. We don't want to read about that. Well, I don't want to write about it, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I do want to write about what all the wonderful things that people can do to each other in difficult times.
Yeah.
So that's, and I've got a tentative title for it. It's The Boy and His Shadow. It's about the boy's journey and what happens to him. And that's my next book, Jaden.
Wow.
Stay tuned.
Wow, everyone at home, stay tuned as well. And what about the other? You said you have 2 writing projects.
Then the other one. Oh, and the other one is, you know how I said, you know, the drip in in a lake,
in the pond, yeah.
the pond, and so, because I believe, okay, my book is, I know what it's called. I'm definite about the title. The title is Had You Not Lived.
Wow.
Had you not lived. Now, the question is, had you not lived, Jaden, at all, had your parents not had you, how would the world be different? And that's the premise, that's the question of my book. And I go on and answer it. The answer is multi-layered. And as I said, we have influence on each other, even though we don't realize it. When I'm sitting in a bus stop and I turn around and smile at this old lady sitting next to me, I've never seen her before. I will probably never see her again. We get on the bus, we go our own way, and she walks off. Now, has my smile made any difference to her at all?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, and is she likely to then take that difference? Let's say it made her feel better about humans and how how a total stranger can give you a smile for no reason, for no return at all. So is she then likely to pass that on to her children, to her friends, to her neighbor, to her lover, whatever? So, that's the premise of and I talk about altruism, I talk about love.
Wow.
And how love can be like the ripple on a lake, because it's not just the love between, say, you and me as friends. It's not just that. It goes beyond us.
The pure,
and that's my second book. So there you go.
It's on my list. It's really amazing. I've always suffered with mental health for my whole life, or as I just call it, Piscean nature. And I remember I'd always been, in and out of depression even as a child, and I'd got to a stage where I kind of just was bored of my own moaning, really, and I decided with some friends of mine to create. It was called and with a Buddhist monk, a nomadic Buddhist monk, funnily enough, that I knew at the time, and I started JC Fundraising, which was a company, non-profit organization of paying it forward. Now, I didn't have any money, but I had time and I had a bit of talent, so I could do things. So I would create events and I would pick a charity or a cause for a year, and I would, for that year, raise as much money as I could for that one particular thing that touched my spirit. And it was quite interesting because I always said, my dream, and it still is my dream, I just kind of laid back on it for a while, I don't know why, but was I wanted JC fundraising in every town, in every city, in every country, in every state in the world. Just a bunch of people looking at ways to pay it forward. And I said, it's not really, I wanted to change it from fundraising to fundraising, because even if it meant going and sweeping the leaves off some old lady's front garden just for the sake of doing it, because that she's going to feel safer. And, I remember
random acts of kindness.
Absolutely. And I remember exactly what you just said. I kind of used an example that, a lot of the old people, especially in England, their families would put them in a home. They're not really cared about. They're just kind of like...
Where did you grow up, Jaden?
London, West London.
Yeah, you have a very London accent. I didn't want to guess.
You don't think it's Mexican? I thought it was a bit more Mexican now, isn't it?
No.
Okay,
it's from London. Yeah. Well, I don't know what a Mexican accent is.
Hello, it is me. No, I think it's very... I remember kind of saying it as one of my talks to people that, were getting involved with my non-profit, was like, even if there's that one person that you see walking down the street, that same old lady who walks down the street once a week on a Wednesday afternoon to cash her check or to pick up her groceries, and you don't know, her family might have rejected her, she might not have any friends, her husband's dead, she might not exist to anybody on this planet, and that one smile can completely change her day, because in that moment she is recognized as an equal and beautiful human being by someone else who had an abundance of smiles to give and decided to give her one of them. And that for me is life-changing. It's magic. And that was my...
It can be. It can be like, that's exactly, okay, you got it. You're on the same page.
Yeah,
but related to that also is, and this is going to sound a bit random, but do you know how incredibly unlikely it is for our mere existence?
Oh, yes.
Even the existence of this planet.
Yeah.
The unlikelihood of the existence of our planet and the very conditions that allows human existence, human life, the very fact, and then we come to Jaden and Arek, that how unlikely was it that you were even born, and I was born. And so it's an incredible thinking that in this moment, in this short time that we have on this planet, that the amount, the unlikelihood then gives us such privilege, such amazing opportunities to do good and kindness and all that. So that's another. So anyway, I'm preaching a bit, and there's a bit of Buddhism and a bit of spiritualism in all this. But it's me doing my bit, like you are with your songs and your music and your life and your charities or whatever. We do what we can in our sphere of influence, and that's all we can do.
Absolutely. And what is the potential future hold for Arek Sinanian?
Arek Sinanian's future, I think he's going to continue to write. He's going to continue to love and to create music, to listen to music, and to live his values. And other than writing books, I have other things. I do mentoring for young kids at school. So I try to connect with community, and I try to give back, because I have lived an incredible life, Jaden, such a wonderful life, such opportunities, and I want to give back, and I'm not done yet, and I've still got opportunities, but I also am now in a position to give back to society, to give back to my neighbors and my friends and my lovers and everything else. So it's all, I mean, we're here for a short time, and I just want to make sure that I leave this planet in a slightly better condition, which may not happen, but anyway. At
least your footprint will be.
Yeah, that's right.
more
Yeah,
footprint will be.
yeah, yeah.
Arek, thank you so much for being part of this show. I really appreciate your time, your love of life, your compassion for life, your creativity and your spirit. I really thank you for being part of my show. I wish you all the love and luck and success with your book. I'm also very excited about you being on my book read show as well.
Yep.
That is something that has to be done.
Yes,
I'm very, very
yes,
excited by that.
yes. I'm excited about, and I reflect back to you your love and your creativity and your generosity. I'm very grateful for this, Jaden. You're doing a fantastic job. I admire what you're doing, and I wish you luck, but also I want to support you as well.
Thank you so much, my friend. Well, people at home, you've met him, you love him. You know where you can buy his books because he's already mentioned it's already on Amazon. You can also go to his website as well. You'll find a list of all of his social media running underneath this interview and on the title page of this show as well. So please go and show the brother some love, some support. Go and buy his books, both of them, not just The Art of Deception, but I think a little bit of back reading on A Climate of Denial as well is actually very good. Arek, thank you so much, mate. We are definitely in contact. I will see you again very soon.
I hope so. Take care.
Yeah, my friend. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Arek, again, thank you so much for being part of my show. I really appreciate your time and your passion and your compassion for the earth and your talent and your creativity. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. Thank you, you beautiful people at home, for joining Arek and I on the Jaden Show. I really do hope that you will go and find him on his social media platforms, that you will like, that you will subscribe, that you will share, that you will comment. Please go and get his books from Amazon and the other platforms where you're able to purchase his books. Both of them really, really important reads. I suggest you go and do that. It would be really good to put them on your bookshelf and definitely to put them on your reading list. Something you should definitely do. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Jaden Show. I feel very appreciative of you that again you are here joining me to meet another wonderful person that I've introduced you to. Please come back next week for my next lovely, lovely guest. In the meantime, I hope you have a really, really, really wonderful new week. I'm going to leave you with a bit more music. Stay beautiful. Please like, please subscribe, please share, please comment, tell everybody. And I will see you next week on The Jaden Show. Take care. Stay beautiful. Bye-bye.